All right, guys, before the video begins, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. This is my longest video by I don't know, it's going to be a half an hour, I think, by the time I'm done editing. I tried to leave it as unedited as possible. I took out things such as like loading and waiting for like yarn dependencies to install, or when I was debugging and I wasn't doing anything, I was kind of just like staring. I took those out. I threw in a couple other edits. Let me know if you like them or not. I'm not sure if I'll keep doing that style of video, but otherwise, I just want to throw this in and say, this is my first time with a really long video. I've seen other YouTubers do it and they seem to get good results, and I just want to see how it goes for my channel. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Talk to you later. All right, in today's video, we're going to set up a brand new production level Laravel app. I'm going to walk you through everything I install with all my apps, and then we're going to set up a front end with React and Inertia, and we'll use Tailwind as well, and we'll see how it goes. So first thing we're going to do is install Laravel. I'm just going to call this Laravel new project. All right, Laravel's installed. Let's change the directory into that project directory we made. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is install Telescope and Horizon. So we're going to use composer require Laravel Telescope. So Telescope will help us debug our application, monitor requests, view exceptions. All right, Telescope's installed. Next thing we're going to install is Horizon. Composer require Laravel Horizon. So Horizon will manage all of our queue jobs and workers for us. Makes it really easy to use async processes and jobs in the background. All right, so Horizon's installed. Next thing I'll move on to is the front end. So we're going to use Tailwind for this project. So I'm going to add a couple yarn dependencies. So yarn add Tailwind CSS. All right, now that Tailwind's installed, I'm going to open up my CSS file, which is a Sass file because we use Sass by default, and we're going to paste in our Tailwind directives. All right, next up, we're going to create the base Tailwind config file with npx tailwind init. Great, so that's been created. All right, and then finally in Laravel Mix, we are going to set up our PostCSS plugin for Tailwind. So I'm just going to delete the comments by default. I don't care for those. And so I have this copy pasted from the docs. We have an options command that takes process CSS URLs as false. And then post CSS, we're going to use Tailwind, which we need to import up here. Tailwind CSS equals require Tailwind CSS. And then path your Tailwind config is this ./tailwind config.js as was created by the npx command. So now I should be able to yarn install to get the rest of the dependencies, and then yarn run watch to see if Tailwind is building. All right, while we're waiting for that, we are going to use Laravel Valet to link up this directory. So now if I go to project.test, I have my Laravel file or my Laravel app here running, and then I can use welcome.blade.php. And we're going to drop all these default styles. Get rid of those. And then on the body class, let's just make the background red. So this is a Tailwind style. And then if our project built properly, we should have a red background. And fail. What went wrong? Oh, okay. So I spent some time clicking around, and obviously, I have not included my style sheet. So I see here that my app.css is 855 kilobytes, which is gigantic, which means Tailwind is in there. However, we did not include it. And then rel equals style sheet. Okay, so now I've included the styles. My background's red. Tailwind is set up and working. The last thing we want to do is when we do a production build, we want to prune's not the right word. We want to purge all of the unused CSS that Tailwind generates so that our CSS file isn't 855 kilobytes. It's more like 5. So in Webpack mix, we're going to do if mix dot is in production. Is it in production? And then we're going to check the docs. Purge. All right, so we need to install full human PostCSS Purge CSS as a dev dependency, yarn add dev. There's another way you can do this easier. Oh no, I know. Tailwind, Laravel, Webpack, Laravel mix purge. This is what we really want. So let's yarn remove what we just installed, and then we're going to use this instead. This does everything for us automatically. And then we just require it in our Webpack file. And then we just purge CSS. And then you can specify options like which directories and stuff you want to purge. But for right now, I just want to make sure it's purging. And I'll tweak it in the future. So we do yarn production to run a production build. I don't know if it's in production, if that's the right method. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, in production. All right, so that built properly. We can go back to our app. We refresh. We can see our CSS is now 1.1 kilobytes compressed, and here uncompressed is 2.09, which is perfect. Okay, and then last thing I want to do is you can notice here that the CSS file doesn't have a version name. So what I want to do is output a hash based on the version so that we don't accidentally cache our CSS file and JS files really in production. So if we're running a production build, we want to purge our CSS and we want to add a version hash to the end of the files. And then in our welcome blade, we can't just include this directly. Instead, we use a helper called mix. And we bring in the file path, which is app.css. And now what will happen is that there will be a mix manifest.json created. And right now, the name of the file is the output. But after we run this version, we'll have the name of the path, and it'll have a hash at the end. And then our mix helper, see? So it has this random ID. It's not random, but it's a hash of the file. And then our mix helper looks up this path that we gave it, and it says, okay, you can find this file here. And then when we go read it from welcome, we get the hashed. So then whenever CSS files change, we'll get a different hash, and then our browser will know to go fetch the new one. Okay, so that should be it for Tailwind right now. The next thing I would do for Tailwind is configure Purge to look in the correct directories. But actually, I'm going to do this anyways because I don't think it looks for JSX files by default. Oh, it does. Yep. Okay. So yeah, I can leave this as is because it's going to look in resources, which is where my JS is going to be. It's going to look for HTML, JS, JSX, TS, TSX, PHP, and Vue files. And that should be good for now. There have been some use cases where if I use like a third-party dependency, for example, it was like a markdown editor or something, I needed to say, don't extract those styles, but that's only on a as-is basis. So by default, this should get you, 95% of the way. All right. All right, so next up is Inertia and our React setup. So I'm going to install Inertia and Inertia React. We're going to set up the Webpack mix file, the Laravel mix file to have a bit of custom Webpack config. We're going to set up dynamic imports so that we can do load specific JS files for the page we're on rather than shipping everything all up front at once, which is also called code splitting. And then we're going to set up React and then render a dummy page. So the first thing we're going to do is install the dependencies. yarn add inertia react, and then I think this doesn't include React and React DOM, so we need to do yarn add React and React DOM. And then we're going to take this Webpack config chunk for Webpack mix and tack that on the end. And then it's using path here, which we need to include. All right, so we got our path included. And then for now, these can just stay the same. I don't need to tweak anything here. Then we're going to set up dynamic imports. Yarn add this as a dev dependency. And then we'll create our Babel RC file. I'm going to have to move that. Move it down here, paste that in. So that'll allow us to do our code splitting imports. And then we're going to set up our default React page. So in app.js, get rid of Bootstrap. We can also go clean this up now. We don't need Bootstrap in here at all. And then I'm going to clean up my default dependencies that Laravel ships with. So the only one I don't really need is Lodash. I prefer Lodash ES. So I'm going to remove Lodash, and then everything else. Oh, the template compiler too. That doesn't need to be here. That was a mix that added that. Okay. So those should be cleaned up. So now we have Inertia imported, React DOM imported. We're going to find the document that has an ID of app, and then we're going to mount our React app to that. And for right now, our React app is just the Inertia app with the initial page that we'll pass in from the server, and then a pages directory here. So next thing we're going to do is in here, the JS folder, we're going to make a directory called pages. I don't like the uppercases though, so I'm going to change that. And then following the documentation again, we are going to create a base layout. Yep, that's fine. I like that. Put it in shared layout.jsx, paste that in. We don't need any links or anything right now. It can just be a pretty dumb component. And then creating a page component. So under pages, we can have welcome. That'll be uppercase. Welcome.jsx. And we import from shared, which I changed to lowercase. And that's it. Now, the back end, which I believe we can find under oh yeah, this is what I want too. So there's a server-side adapter for Laravel specifically. So I'm going to install that so that we can use this blade helper called Inertia. And then we'll have something like a resources views app.blade.php. Paste that in here. We're already using Mix, which is perfect. And it has our Inertia blade helper. And then we just need to render a page. So we can go web for our web roots and just say root get, let's just call it like test. Yeah, I'll call it test. Test, And we, this, I don't want to do it inline. I want to do a controller here. Test controller at show. And then we'll use artisan make controller test controller. Open that up. Paste in our function called show. It does not take an event. Don't care about that. We have a page called welcome, so we'll render the welcome page. And then as an example, I can pass in like a user property that has a name, my name, and then save all this. And then in our welcome file, the props that we passed here, so user, which will get transformed to an object in JavaScript, will be passed as props here. So I can call user and then say welcome user.name. And if I did it all right, I should be able to go to test and see an error. Oh, I didn't import my imports. That's fine. Getting closer. Oh, I need to build all my stuff. So we've installed everything. I'm gonna use a watch build. All right, so next up, we're running into compile errors with our React setup. So we can actually use the React method here, and that might actually take care of that for us because Laravel Mix knows about React, and it did not like that at all. Okay. Can I find module Laravel Mix Purge CSS? Did we not install that? Oh, that's weird. I thought we installed that. Okay, try again. There we go. So now that we told Mix that we're using React, it'll install the Babel preset React for us. It probably won't even require that view template compiler, so I'm going to try to remove that again for the third time. And did it? Yeah, it did. Okay, so let's go back to remove this. Now I can't find any of my things. I can't resolve React. Can't resolve inertia. What are you talking about? What is going on? Pretty sure these are all installed. Try one more time here. Yarn watch. Okay, so another yarn watch seemed to fix that. So our output now shows we have our CSS file at 855 kilobytes because it's not being purged because we're running a development build. We have our JS file at 1.09 megabytes. And then we have a dynamic import, which is our welcome page at 2.63 kilobytes. So now we can go back here. We can refresh. Yay! And there we go. We have Inertia running our server rendered technically page, but it's JS that you're seeing. And our prop that we passed from our test controller here, some name, is being updated here. So we have Inertia set up. We have Laravel Mix compiling our React components using, where did that go? Mix.react. We have Inertia using our imports with our relative path here. Sorry, not a relative path. Our alias path. So we have this. That works perfectly. So I would say Inertia here is set up and ready to go. All right, next up is the one that always takes me the most amount of time, and that is linting our JavaScript with ESLint. So this is always a painful process. For the most part, I'm going to just copy our configuration from another file, another project, but hopefully we don't run into too many errors. So the first thing I'm going to do, I know I'm going to need it, is an ESLint.rcjs file. And now this is where I'm going to copy. Actually. Yeah, okay. And then we're going to install some dependencies. So we have ESLint plugin Babel, ESLint plugin imports because we're using dynamic imports. And we're running React, so we should get the plugin for React. All right, next up then in our ESLint config file, we need to tell it, okay, use the extensions for ESLint recommended, the plugin for React because we're running React code, and then the plugin for dynamic imports so that you can tell us if our imports are bad. Okay, so let's just see where that takes us here. So import is reserved. Don't like that. A couple more things I want to add here. First, In the environment, we're going to put as node because this will be compiled technically through node, and our target is node to be compiled by Babel. A parser for ESLint. So we need to install the dependency for Babel ESLint. I think that's what it's called. And that looks like parser, Babel ESLint, and then parser options. So we're going to tell it that we're outputting ECMA version 8, and source type is module. And then let's see what else we're at. Okay, now we got through the imports. I think this parser options. Let's see. No. Yeah. Okay. So telling it like, hey, we're using Babel to compile this, so that gets transformed. Fix the import error, and then now we're on to another error with document is not defined because that's a global variable. So we're going to say globals, and we have document as true. All right, so that fixed that. Next thing I want to do is I prefer semicolons. So I think the ESLint recommended plugin says no semicolons by default, or it doesn't care either way. However, we're going to change that because I care. So we're going to change a couple things. So quotes, we're going to prefer single quotes. We're going to prefer, which looks like this. I'm all copying these from another project. Indents, 2 spaces. Do not use console or debugger, at least when you commit your code. Semicolon is an error unless you use it. And then the comma dangle, I don't really care about that one right now. And then, let's see. So still no good. What happens if we close this, and what is it complaining about? Okay, so not sure why, but I needed to restart the VS Code window. I think the ESLint, I don't know, it wasn't running or was broken or something. You can see here, I had an error in the config, which I fixed, and it still didn't work, and then I restarted, and it was good. So now when we run, actually, let's make a package.json command for ESLint, and we'll do get the local version. So from node modules, bin ESLint, and let's just see what that runs. It failed. So we need to tell it what to look at. So we can tell it only look at extension, JS and JSX files, and then only look in the resources JS directory. Resources. Run that again. Cool. We got some errors now. We can go into welcome.jsx, hit save. Why can't you find that? Okay, prop types, we're gonna turn off prop types for now because that's gonna be a problem. So do you React prop types? 0. How do you turn off this? React prop types. ESLint. So that was working. I was just looking at the wrong one like an idiot. So now we need no unresolved. So ESLint, what was that called? ESLint plugin import aliases. So let's try this. Yarn add dev that, and then copy all this stuff. Throw it in here under settings. I'm going to try without the extensions to start. Without all this, we'll do map the @ sign to resources JS. That it? Yeah, okay. Nope, did not like that. Okie dokie. Okay, let's try to add the extensions back. Oh, okay. So you do need to have the extensions. So you can see now this knows what we're talking about, which is good. I'm not going to use TypeScript in this project, so I can delete that. Okay, so that fixed that error. And then in our layout file, we have some errors. Inertia link is defined but never used. Thank you. And that's it. And we run again. We're good to go. We do have a warning though that says the React version was not specified. So in our ESLint, we need to go React version. I don't need quotes on any of this. And I think it's detect or auto or something. Let's see. Looking at our other project, yep, it's detect. And we'll comma and then run again, and our warning should be gone. Perfect. And then the final thing is in our package.json. We're gonna add one more actually, we don't need to. Let's just see what happens if we did. No, I think we're good. Okay, so ESLint's installed. We added a command for yarn ESLint to run ESLint, and then you can also suffix hash -- fix to automatically fix any errors that ESLint is able to fix. And we set up React. The import resolver should be good to go for ESLint. That is always painful. All right, next up is our GitLab setup for our continuous integration scripts. So we're going to make a Gitlab CI file, and then most of this will all just be copied from the existing project. So I'll show you, I'll copy paste it over, and then I'll show you step by step what I did. So I have an image here. So this is going to be our Docker image that we use to build our app on. We have cache directories, which actually these aren't super useful, but basically they help cache the two folders, vendor and node modules, between builds, just to hopefully, speed up the yarn installs and the composer installs. Then we define 3 stages: install, build, and test. In the install stage, we install our composer dependencies and our yarn dependencies, and then we upload them as artifacts. So we don't cache them per se, but they're uploaded and attached to the job. And the reason we do this is because this is how you can share files between steps in a job. So we upload node modules and vendor, and then in our build stage, we say we depend on the dependency stage. So let's restart. So in the build stage, we say that we depend on the install stage. So install has to finish first, and then build will start. And then we yarn install again in the case that our artifacts didn't get uploaded correctly or anything. But if they did, this only takes like half a second. So it's worth it to throw it in there, because if you don't, and for whatever reason your artifacts don't get uploaded, your production build's going to fail. So to build our JS, we call yarn install again, and then we run our production build. And that's really, there's 2 reasons for this. One is just to make sure everything's compiling. And then 2, what I'll do in the future, once this is actually ready to be deployed, is that I'll add an artifact to upload anything in the public directory to this step, so that our production assets that are compiled will be uploaded as artifacts, and then we can download them or upload them to S3 or do whatever, instead of having to rebuild them on the server. All right, so next in our test stage, we have code styling. So again, it depends on the install stage. And then we basically just run our PHP CS configuration, which we need to install still. And then we run our yarn install again, and then our yarn run ESLint. But while I'm here, I'm just going to require the code sniffer. All right, so I'm just going to go here and require the PHP code sniffer. dependency and install that into the project. Oh, I didn't want it globally. Sorry, go back. There we go. So that'll install the code sniffer so that we can use it during our CI builds. And then we have a JavaScript testing stage. So this is for, again, it depends on dependencies is the install stage. Again, we install our Yarn dependencies. However, if the artifacts worked, this will take no time at all. Then we would run Yarn test if we had a front-end test set up. Right now we don't, so it's commented out. And then what I do is I make a file called commit hash that exists in our public directory. It doesn't even have to exist there. It could exist anywhere in the repo. But what I do is I put in the current commit hash into that file. And then later on, it's not in this script yet, but eventually, again, when we go to production, we'll upload the assets to S3 and we'll put them in a folder that is the same name as the commit hash. And then I can easily pull those assets from the production server, from S3 onto the production server based on the commit hash. And then our last step here is our PHP unit tests. So we need to ensure that our build.js runs. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that that mix manifest file is generated, as we talked about earlier, so that any requests to a server rendered page don't fail, because Laravel fails, well, technically mix fails if it can't find the manifest file. So we run our composer install, again, just in case the artifacts failed. We copy over our example environment file because we always need an environment file. We generate our keys for encryption, and then we run PHP unit. All right, and that's it. So that is how GitLab is set up and configured. There will be a couple more changes before we go to production, but for now, this will get us through all of development. All right, and then the last step, there's actually nothing to do here, but I always like to make sure that our tests for our PHP side are running. So basically what we need to do is just run vendor bin PHP unit and make sure we see green. Depending on the application, I would either set up a custom test framework if I have a couple utilities or helpers that we're going to use. Maybe we'll use Dusk to test our front end. You could use that to do the whole integration suite. And then the other thing we would set up typically is our JS tests with Jest. However, at this stage, I don't know how much JS is going to be in this app, so it might just be covered via Dusk. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. But for now, this is basically how we set up our production-ready Laravel app. So we went over... Oh, actually, there's 2 more things we need to do. Let's go back. Okay, so a couple more things we need to do. At the beginning of the video, we installed dependencies for Horizon and Telescope. However, we didn't set them up. So we need to set up Horizon with... We've done this step. Now we need to install the assets so we can install those. And then it's recommended that we use a failed jobs table. So we'll set that up and we'll run our migrations. Although I won't run them now because I don't have a database set up for this project yet. And then same thing for Telescope. All right, and then same thing for Telescope. Once it is installed, we run the Telescope install command. And then we would migrate if we had our database set up and ready to go. Depending on, again, how we want to, what the app is and how we're going to utilize it and, use Telescope, we might change some configuration files. For right now, I just want it set up and running, and then we can tweak it as needed. And same thing with Horizon, like we'll have a horizon.config file. Where are the workers? Here, okay. So like by default, you get one process with everything on the default queue. Sorry, one worker with 10 processes for both local and production. Local, you get 3 processes. I don't tweak this until we have our app running. So we want to make sure that we're not tweaking before we need to. So let's run it in default for now, see how it goes, and then tweak in the future. So I think that's it. I just want to review here. So we have our red background, which means Tailwind is running in production. That's fine. We can even do a production build to ensure that Tailwind is running and not extracting our BG red class. So it ran. We still have a red background, and then we can confirm we have Inertia running here. So with that some name that I passed in the test controller, everything is set up and running there with Inertia. So now we can start building out our React app. Our backend is set up and ready to go. And that is it. That is our production Laravel setup video. If you liked it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. And of course, subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter @OwenConti, and I'll see you next time.